A man left work on Friday afternoon, but instead of going home, he stayed out the entire weekend hunting with the boys and spending his entire paycheck. When he finally appeared at home Sunday night, he was confronted by his very angry wife and was barraged for nearly 2 hours with a tirade of his actions. Finally, his wife stopped the nagging and said to him, "How would you like it if you didn't see me for 2 or 3 days?" To which he replied, "That would be fine with me." Monday went by, and he didn't see his wife. Tuesday and Wednesday came and went with the same results. Thursday, the swelling went down just enough where he could see her a little out of the corner of his left eye. 1. The teacher asked the class to use the word fascinate in a sentence. Molly put up her hand and said, "My family went to my granddad's farm, and we all saw his pet sheep. It was fascinating." The teacher said, "That was good, but I wanted you to use the word fascinate, not fascinating." Sally raised her hand. She said, "My family went to see Rock City, and I was fascinated." The teacher said, "Well, that was good, Sally, but I wanted you to use the word fascinate." Little Johnny raised his hand, but the teacher hesitated because she had been burned by little Johnny before. She finally decided there was no way he could damage the word fascinate, so she called on him. Johnny said, "My Aunt Carolyn has a sweater with 10 buttons, but her breasts are so big she can only fasten 8. 2. Sam goes into Macy's to the lingerie department, and he says to the salesgirl, "My wife has sent me in for a bra, size 34B, and she said that you'd know what I meant." The saleslady says, "Boy, it's been a long time since anybody's asked me for a bra. They usually ask me for a Catholic bra, or a Salvation Army bra, or a Presbyterian bra." He says, "Well, what's the difference?" "Well," she explains, "the Catholic bra supports the masses. The Salvation Army bra uplifts the downfallen, and the Presbyterian bra keeps them staunch and upright." He goes, "Well then, what's a bra?" "Oh, a bra makes mountains out of molehills." 3. One day, while on patrol, a police officer pulled over a car for speeding. He went up to the car and asked the driver to roll down her window. The first thing he noticed, besides the nice red sports car, was how hot the driver was. Blue eyes, blonde, the works. "I've pulled you over for speeding, ma'am. Could I see your driver's license?" "What's a license?" replied the blonde, instantly giving away the fact that she was as dumb as a stump. "It's usually in your wallet," replied the officer. After fumbling for a few minutes, the driver managed to find it. "Now, may I see your registration?" asked the cop. "Registration? What's that?" asked the blonde. "It's usually in your glove compartment," said the cop impatiently. After some more fumbling, she found the registration. "I'll be back in a minute," said the cop and walked back to his car. The officer called into the dispatch to run a check on the woman's license and registration. After a few moments, the dispatcher came back. Is this woman driving a red sports car?" "Yes," replied the officer. "Is she a drop-dead gorgeous blonde?" asked the dispatcher. Yes," replied the cop. "Here's what you do," said the dispatcher. "Give her the stuff back and drop your pants." "What? I can't do that. It's inappropriate," exclaimed the cop. "Trust me, just do it," said the dispatcher, a smile in his voice. So the cop goes back to the car, gives back the license and registration, and drops his pants, just as the dispatcher said. The blonde looks down and sighs. Oh no, not another breathalyzer. 4. A senator is visiting a primary school. In one class, he asks the students if anyone can give him an example of a tragedy. One little boy stands up and offers that. If my best friend who lives next door is playing in the street when a car came by and killed him, that would be a tragedy. No, the senator says, that would be an accident. A girl raises her hand. If a school bus carrying 50 children drove off a cliff, killing everyone inside, that would be a tragedy. I'm afraid not, explains the senator. That is what we would call a great loss. The room is silent. None of the other children dare volunteer. What? Asks the senator. Isn't there anyone here who can give me an example of a tragedy? Finally, little Johnny in the back raises his hand. In a timid voice, he says, if an airplane carrying a senator was blown up by a bomb, that would be a tragedy. Marvelous, the senator beams. And can you tell me why that would be a tragedy? Well, says Johnny, because it wouldn't be an accident, and it certainly would be no great loss. 5. 2 bowling teams, one of all blondes and one of all brunettes, charter a double-decker bus for a weekend bowling tournament in London. The brunette team rides in the bottom of the bus. The blonde team rides on the top level. The brunette team down below is living it up, having a great time, when one of them realizes she doesn't hear anything from the blondes upstairs. She decides to go up and investigate. When the brunette reaches the top, she finds all the blondes frozen in fear, staring straight ahead at the road and clutching the seats in front of them with white knuckles. She says, "What the heck's going on up here? We're having a grand time downstairs." One of the blondes looks up and says, "Yeah, but you've got a driver." 6. A mechanic was removing a cylinder head from the motor of a Lamborghini when he spotted a well-known heart surgeon in his shop. The surgeon was waiting for the service manager to take a look at his car when the mechanic shouted across the garage, "Hey, Doc, can I ask you a question?" The surgeon, a bit surprised, walked over to where the mechanic was working on the car. The mechanic straightened up, wiped his hands on a rag, and said, "So, Doc, look at this engine. I open its heart, take valves out, fix them, put them back in, and when I finish, it works just like new. So, how come I get such a small salary and you get the really big bucks when you and I are doing basically the same thing?" The surgeon paused, smiled, leaned over, then whispered to the mechanic, "Try doing it with the engine running." 7. The forest animals decided that they didn't like stepping on creep every day, so they got together and built an outhouse. Everything was great, and the forest floor was much cleaner after that. But one day, they found out that the window on the outhouse was broken. So they held a meeting and asked if anybody knew anything about the broken window. Sheepishly, the rabbit said, "I am a bit embarrassed, but last night I was using the outhouse when the bear came in. He grabbed me, did his business, then he wiped his bottom with me and threw me out the window." The animals reprimanded the bear and made him fix the window. After a couple of days, the door was smashed. Another meeting was called, and again the animals were asked if anybody knew anything about the broken door. Sheepishly, the fox said, "I am a bit embarrassed, but last night, as I was using the outhouse, the bear came in. He did the same thing with me as with the rabbit a few days ago, but he threw me out through the door." So, the animals again reprimanded the bear, made him repair the door, and explained as best as possible that this behavior will not be tolerated. Then, 2 days later, the whole outhouse was destroyed. It was completely smashed to pieces. Again, a meeting was called to find out if anybody knew anything about it. Sheepishly, the porcupine said, "I am a bit embarrassed." 8. The preacher, in his Sunday sermon, used "forgive your enemies" as his subject. After a long sermon, he asked how many were willing to forgive their enemies. About half held up their hands. Not satisfied, he harangued for another 20 minutes and repeated his question. This time, he received a response of about 80%. Still unsatisfied, he lectured for another 15 minutes and repeated his question. With all thoughts now on Sunday dinner, all responded except one elderly lady in the rear. "Mrs. Jones, are you not willing to forgive your enemies?" asked the preacher. "I don't have any," said the old lady. "Mrs. Jones, that is very unusual. How old are you?" 97. "That is incredible. Mrs. Jones, please come down in front and tell the congregation how a person can live to be 97 and not have an enemy in the world." The little sweetheart of a lady tottered down the aisle, very slowly turned around and said, "It's easy. I just outlived the bastards." 9. At school one day, little Johnny's teacher asks the class to use the word "contagious" in a sentence. Cindy raises her hand. "Yes, Cindy?" She answers, "I was at the dentist's office with my mom, and she said not to play with the toys in the waiting room because the other kids were contagious." "Very good, Cindy," the teacher said. "Anyone else want to try?" Samantha raises her hand. "Yes, Samantha." She answers, "My dad tells me not to yawn, because then everybody else yawns. He says yawning is contagious." "Excellent work, Samantha. Very creative," the teacher praises. "Okay, one more volunteer." Little Johnny raises his hand. "Yes, Johnny?" "Well," he says, "I was helping my dad in the yard last week, and we saw the neighbor painting his house. He was using a small brush, so I asked my dad, 'Daddy, why is he using such a small brush?' And he says, 'I don't know, son, but it's gonna take that contagious.'" 10. While teaching a class, a teacher trying to teach good manners asked her students the following question. "Michael, if you were on a date having dinner with a nice young lady, how would you tell her that you have to go to the bathroom?" Michael said, "Just a minute, I have to go pee." The teacher responded by saying, "That would be rude and impolite. What about you, Sherman? How would you say it?" Sherman said, "I am sorry, but I really need to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back." That's better, but it's still not very nice to say the word bathroom at the dinner table. And you, little Johnny, can you use your brain for once and show us your good manners? Johnny said, "I would say, darling, may I please be excused for a moment? I have to shake hands with a very dear friend of mine who I hope to introduce you to after dinner."